Hello and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast, where every week we mix it up a little bit and bring you something new. I am, of course, Levi.
I'm Reed.
And I'm Seth.
And we're here to tell you a story, or in this case, to recap a story. We're going to be taking this episode to talk a little bit about our most recent story, which is the cross-species meditation. Is the name of the story, which has very little to do with the story, but it was come up on the first episode, so here we go. Anyways, do any of you guys have anything interesting to say about this story off the bat?
Yeah, the greatest part of it for me was this story element, which was what was Seth's story element?
Fiction by another name.
Fiction by another name. And
yeah,
we threw out Ivanhoe. Well, I reread Ivanhoe, which was really a fun. I really enjoyed it. And I had to look back. Sir Walter Scott published it in like early 1800s.
Yeah, it was like 1814 or something.
Something like that. Yeah, and there was a couple of kind of cringeworthy things of somebody that was, not bad-hearted, but showed some prejudicial attitudes that would probably stem from just unfamiliarity.
Right.
And I kind of cringed, because. But I thought about it at the times, it was for somebody who wasn't acquainted with, one of the characters, the Templars, had some black slaves or black. Yeah. And his discussion of them was his impressions that were based on kind of his complete ignorance of these people. And they were just these exotic characters that were just a tiny little side mention in the story. But just his little narrative about it was like literally from the lips of a person who had a whole bunch of prejudices that wasn't based on anything, and it was kind of wild speculation, and it was a little cringeworthy. It just struck me,
Yeah.
In a ninth grade English literature class, it would be problematic for some parents, I think. Just occurred to me. But I love the story.
The story of Ivanhoe would be?
That just little vignette, if somebody's all like hypersensitive about such things.
Right.
And lacks the capacity to place it in historical context.
Yeah. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, that's like trying to read Huckleberry Finn and get upset because of the use of the N-word. Right?
Yeah, I guess I don't remember that in Huckleberry Finn.
Yeah.
But maybe I just don't see it.
Maybe by the time you came along, it had already gotten to the knackers. I often wonder how much editing goes on for political correctness.
Oh, yeah.
We could get a new copy of it and compare it to the 1902 copy I have.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool. I think Seth and I talked, I don't know if it was during the last episode or right after it, about how the fiction by another name needs to be moved to be a first week story element, because we had like all these ideas built up on the first week, and then the second week came in and he introduced Ivanhoe, and so for the last episode, I don't think you were there, Reed. No, you weren't there. We just went back and forth trying to stuff our story into the narrative of Ivanhoe, and it wasn't working.
Okay.
We'd kind of get to a place and then it'd kind of not fail. And then we'd get to a place, and I think Seth's sad ending was really true to Ivanhoe, which is really good. But I personally wasn't super satisfied with the outcome of the story. And I think partially what it was is we came up with this idea, and then we had this kind of really nice and interesting base idea, and then we make that idea with its own dynamics be Ivanhoe.
Well, yeah, and I mentioned that completely side thing, but I was rereading Ivanhoe with a thought toward the whole subject of prejudice, especially in you have a multi-sentient species culture where you had creatures of completely different physiological, so to speak, makeup and trying to share a planet.
Right. I was thinking as we were doing this that, this is like fourth or fifth story we've come up with where life has been seeded on a planet or augmented on a planet and by something else.
Right.
That's kind of like a theme.
Yeah.
That keeps coming back.
Like the ancients in Stargate.
Right, exactly. And I was thinking about that. I was like, at some point, at some point I should take all of these stories, write little outlines, and then like design a universe, right? Where all these little disparate things have happened.
Mm-hmm.
And say, okay, this episode, this episode, this episode, and this episode, canonically, according to me, being 1/3 author of them, happened all in the same universe. And this is the universe where they happened.
Cool.
Yeah, I think it's more than 4 or 5, though.
Is it?
I think so, because I think it comes up a lot.
That's cool. I don't know why one thing I love about that is that we create these worlds and we say, and life was seated there, but things didn't work out exactly as they wanted.
Yeah.
You know? And that's kind of the whole thing. I'm reading John Milton's Paradise Lost currently, and it's really interesting. It was written in 1841, I think. And he talks about God the Father sitting up in heaven and looking down at earth and watching Lucifer make his way to earth, right? And then proclaiming at that moment that humans were going to fall and that something needed to happen. You know, it's like, leave them to themselves and people are going to like go off to the side. It's like this really cool. It's just not really cool. It's really tragic, but it's a really true thing where you have this kind of seeding race that just kind of goes and spreads consciousness and life to all of these planets, but maybe sometimes comes back and tries to police what's happening. But most of the time, they just say, we're just going to give you guys a shot at surviving. You know, I think at some point I'd like to write a bigger story, a sort of wider narrative as to what this race is doing. You know, are they repopulating after some great catastrophe? You know, are they trying to spread consciousness to all the stars so that it can never be wiped out again? You know, are they just sick, twisted, and doing experiments?
Yeah.
You know, it provides for infinite story writing.
Yeah, I was thinking of that series, Castaway on an Alien Shore, you know, where the people that were studying Earth accidentally, like their probe accidentally intersected with an airliner. So they, being the advanced, you know, enlightened people that they were, they couldn't just snuff these people out, but they couldn't save them and then put, you know,
Right.
and put them back on Earth because that would bring up too many questions. So they just put them on other planets.
Oh, yeah.
And so you get a guy with, you know, 21st century technology, an engineer, is placed on a planet with 17th century technology, and he can create quite a stir.
Right.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. This is kind of our own that thing.
You know, I just looked up quick, just out of curiosity, one of my favorite authors, George MacDonald, would have been 17 when Paradise Lost was published. And I would bet everything that I ever owned or ever hoped to own that George MacDonald was familiar with Paradise Lost.
Yeah, from what I've heard about him,
Yeah.
I would not be surprised. Let's put it at that. Let's see what else from the story.
I think kind of pulling from one of the elements in the story and then back to what you were talking about. I know one of the common themes with it is a lot of times these are like terraforming things.
Right.
And in some cases they're being terraformed. I think I'm trying to remember back to a few of them where like it's either certain minerals that are being terraformed or certain environments that are being, you know, done up so that they can come back and mine it later, or where they've put a certain, I think there's one that I have in mind in particular, and I can't remember exactly which one or all the details, but I know that it was like one of those things where some of the sentient life that they made was like a way to like create a workforce to mine these things on these different planets.
They were
and
like,
it back.
Yeah.
But by making it like, you know, to make them more than dumb animals, you know, they kind of started going off their own way.
Yeah. It was like a biological android sort of idea.
Yeah.
And then they needed to make them smart enough to be able to do the work. And so they built into them enough computing power to reach consciousness, and they kind of did. Yeah, I remember that.
And again, there's been like so many of them. So it's like trying to think of the one specific one is hard to remember if you've got all the details right for that one. But
right.
Yeah, like in the Ender series, you know, the one planet where they had sentient trees.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool.
That was cool.
But yeah, no, and the one you had, and I really liked it when you brought it up, which made me like which I love the idea of bringing in the fiction by another name, and I really like Ivanhoe. But then, what was it? The Mandate of Heaven artifact,
Oh yeah,
right? And to think that something like that, could very easily, let's say, be what's that, like retconned?
that is retconned.
No, that as far as some of those other ones go, I mean, the whole premise of that,
Oh,
where it's like a program thing to mold and bend the environment of that planet that it's on to the the will of who's controlling it,
yeah,
where that would make sense for a bunch of those, like they'd kind of search out a planet, find it, program one of those, throw it down, and on a whatever cycle that it's projected for, then they come back, because I know that's in a lot of them. But
right.
And one thing is the projection or speculation, so to speak, that species that quote unquote evolved, on a planet with a certain gravitational constant, and then a different planet where it's a lighter gravitational constant. You'd have on the lighter planet more elongated, slender creatures, where on the heavier planet you'd have squat, bulkier, more heavily muscled creatures.
Right.
Like I think about in C.S. Lewis Space Trilogy, the Sorns on Malacandra would, they have the real long legs and long skinny bodies, and the waves would be really tall, on the water, and the mountains would be the peaks would be very tall, and the verticality would be much more pronounced in both people and the form of the landscape.
Right. I just had this crazy idea. Do we want to? So I'm a huge fan of Stephen King and the Stephen King Dark Tower series, and the sort of inevitable reality that all of Stephen King's books are connected in some way to the Dark Tower.
Yeah.
We are, what are we now, 240 something episodes in? Is that what we are? 230?
Somewhere around there.
Somewhere in the middle 200s. Do we want to say that every single story we've ever made is connected? Is that a thing we want? Is this a press release right now to tell everyone that every single story we've ever made is in the same universe or subset of universes? We're making the biggest. This is Marvel Universe 2.0 right here, ladies and gentlemen.
Uh-huh.
There's going to be movies. There's going to be comic books. There's going to be a cookbook.
We're going to have more superheroes.
Yeah. What are you talking about? We got a hero in every single story. I mean, we got a guy with a top hat. We got a person we have a quartet member. I don't know if you remember this. A quartet member in episode 3, literally made out of nanites. Do you remember that?
Yes, that was a great story.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite. That was in like a world that was dying.
Right.
What an excellent episode. Anyways, I sometimes think that as we progress more and more, that we are going to kind of run out of ideas. And can I just say, I am constantly surprised and delighted by the fact that we have as much variation as we do. We have a lot of reoccurring themes,
Yeah. Like the good guys are good and the bad guys are bad. That's the thing.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, other than that, we have a lot of reoccurring spacefaring themes and stuff like that. But I think I am incredibly impressed by our. Like, I'm literally scrolling through this list of all where I've written down all our story elements, and I literally just saw one here where in the footnotes it says Nazi raptors. Do you remember that one?
Yeah.
Raptors that are Nazis. Which is hilarious.
Of course they'd be Nazis. Come on.
Yeah, that's not the point. The point is that, so.
Speaking of raptors, I saw a peregrine falcon dive bombing a bald eagle on a video today. It was really cool.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
Made a swiping pass and then circled around the next time he came, just as, came hurtling down because he's had a great speed advantage. The bald eagle just flipped over on his back and got those talons right up, and the falcon veered off. It was pretty cool.
Little game of chicken, if you will.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So I think that unless anyone else has any cool pseudo mentions about this, one thing I really like is that I'm not the first person to do it, but something based on a book I was reading was from a nonfiction book. It's really cool how people are able to come up with interesting ideas based on totally and completely nonfiction books.
Yeah.
Just like, here's this like self-help book I'm reading.
Mhm.
Here's a theme. I feel like that's really cool. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for this, albeit shorter episode, but still interesting. A little recap, a little break, a little wayside. Here, stop by the fire. Let's talk a little bit about this story. If you liked this story series, this last 3 episodes, if you like generally what we're doing, we would love to hear from you. You can send us an email at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com. You can @ us on Twitter at @getsbettercast. We would love to hear from you, and we would love to see what sort of interesting things you have you have as far as ideas. If you don't like any of our stories, feel free to contact us as well. If you in fact, it's not that you don't like them, it's that you hate them, feel free to contact us as well. I'm happy to hear your complaints and ideas about how we could do better. And until next time, next week, when we will, in fact, be meeting, same time, same place, we bid you all farewell and see you later and goodbye.